A component is the fundamental building block of an Angular application. It groups the user interface, corresponding data, and event handling functions. Also, an Angular application can be considered to be a tree of components, with a root component having one or more child components, and each of these components having child components of its own, and so on and so forth. A component generally consists of three aspects. Number one, a TypeScript or ES6 class with member variables representing the model data and methods representing the behavior of the component. Number two, an HTML template representing the user interface that can capture user inputs into the model data or present the model data to the user. And finally, number three, an optional style sheet to enhance the appearance of the user interface. Let's try to understand the same with an example. Consider the class appCounter component is just an ordinary ES6 class having a member variable called count and two functions increment and decrement. As the name suggests, when you call these functions, they increment or decrement the value of the member data. Together, this class comprises of the components state and behavior. In order to present the same to the user, we need an HTML code. Take a look at this HTML snippet. As you can see, we are including the variable count and the method calls to decrement and increment. This HTML has access to the component state and behavior. The double curly brackets, also known as handlebars, binds the model data onto the UI. Changes to the model data is reflected immediately. The component's functions are bound to the UI using the round brackets. For example, the click event of the buttons here are associated with decrement and increment functions defined in the components class. So clicking on a button triggers the assigned method call, changing the model data, which will be reflected instantaneously on the UI. In order to combine the class and HTML to make a component, we use TypeScript's Decorator. This is similar to Java's annotations and .NET's attributes. Here, the class appCounter is decorated with @component. Decorators in TypeScript are passed an object as parameter. For the component decorator here, we are specifying two important properties. First, the selector defines the way component is used. For example, appCounter without any prefixed symbol implies that the component should be used like an HTML element. If you use .appCounter for the selector property, then the component is used as a CSS class. If you use square bracket around appCounter for the selector property, then the component is used as an attribute of an HTML element. And one last, if you use #appCounter for the selector property, then the component is used as an ID of an HTML element. General practice and Angular's recommendation is that the components are used like HTML elements. The second property, template, corresponds to the HTML part of the component. As you can see, we have used ES6 template string for embedding multi-line HTML code. Alternately, the class definition and HTML can be kept in separate files. This allows modularity and separation of concerns. For this, use the template URL instead of template property and assign the relative path of an external HTML file.